Location. My name is my name, power and glory, I never change. Stand on loyalty, remain the same. Say what you mean, speak on my name, you go to war with me. We move the same, you think that it's for me. Running the game, kicking the door with me. All through the pain, the snow, the rain, the ups and downs. My name did more for me, y'all keep the fame. I want the glory, been that nigga, bitches never ignored me. Rich in spirit, little bitch can't afford me. Day one static, fix it with a 4G. Red beam on it, you think I'm recording. Kicking front doors, you try to backdoor me. We are not a gang, bitch, we an army. Book a den, you know I don't tell stories. Keep it 100 in the light, man. You niggas fake baby K name Adonis. Mini Drake, clip curl, but somehow I can shoot it straight. Insta clip, I can shoot 4 minutes straight. Turn this to the Super Bowl if I need to. I can hit your chief up with an eagle. Set you up on the score, but they lied to you. Why you letting them niggas mislead you? My name is my name, power and glory, I never change. Stand on loyalty, remain the same. Say what you mean, speak on my name, you go to war with me. We move the same, you think that it's for me. Running the game, kicking the door with me. All through the pain, the snow, the rain, the ups and downs. My name did more for me. My name is my name, power and glory, I never change. Stand on loyalty, remain the same. Say what you mean, speak on my name, you go to war with me. We move the same, you think that it's for me. Running the game, kicking the door with me. All through the pain, the snow, the rain, the ups and downs. My name did more for me. You won't see it coming, I move like a crook, a thief in the night. So watch what you put, my aim precise. These bullets 12 inches long, a block away I could take off the foot. Don't ask me no questions if you know my stance. Bitch, I'm the man, so thanks in advance. They mean a rifle on top of a tripod. If they ever tell you I was taking a stand, think I run up on me, but I'm way too advanced. Spinning with choppers, turn you into a fan. Can show you the steps, but won't hold your hands. They thought they could stop me, it ain't go as planned. How I get this far? Cause I took a chance. Really got ranked, keeping it a band. This ain't what you think, better think again. This ain't what you think, you better think again. My name is my name, power and glory, I never change. Stand on loyalty, remain the same. Say what you mean, speak on my name, you go to war with me. We move the same, you think that it's for me. Running the game, kicking the door with me. All through the pain, the snow, the rain, the ups and downs. My name did more for me. My name is my name, power and glory, I never change. Stand on loyalty, remain the same. Say what you mean, speak on my name, you go to war with me. We move the same, you think that it's for me. Running the game, kicking the door with me. All through the pain, the snow, the rain, the ups and downs. My name did more for me. Went to war with the real, the fake, the snake, the mobsters. Blame it on y'all, y'all created this monster. Went to war with the real, the fake, the snake, the mobsters. Blame it on y'all, y'all created this monster. Went to war with the real, the fake, the snake, the mobsters. Blame it on y'all, y'all created this monster. Went to war with the real, the fake, the snake, the mobsters. Blame it on y'all, y'all created this monster.
Shalom, Israel. Shalom, brothers. Shalom to all the brothers. Yahweh Hashem Shabbat Yahweh Shema Thumb Bashem Yahweh all the sisters. I'm Priest and Officer 500 Shariwan and the Commanding General YAHANNA. And we're the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, started at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York. Okay, today is Monday night's history class. We got a lot of history that we're bringing out. A lot of history we're going to bring out that hasn't been brought out, or that's very quiet, not spoken of here in Canada. I spent a couple of years growing up here in Canada. Went to school here up until around high school, and I never learned. I know my memory of learning history in Canada, the only thing that we were taught was Martin Luther King. We were taught about the Underground Railroad, and that was it. That was the extent of Black history in Canada. And Salaki, I do remember, I think that was back in like the 5th grade or 6th grade, they had introduced us or introduced people to that video series called The Roots, or roots, right? Which for myself was already introduced to me at a younger age from my family. My mother and my father just teaching me a little bit about Black history. And so when you're in Canada learning about slavery, the narrative is always that what Americans did to Blacks inside of America was horrific and disgusting. But they never once speak about what Europeans did to Blacks, to Blacks and Indigenous here in Canada. And what's interesting is that as a lot of these unmarked graves started popping up around Canada, and Canada was being forced to speak about the history or the quote-unquote dark past of Indigenous people here in Canada, they started introducing different things like Indigenous Awareness Month. They introduced a Reconciliation Day, which I think was like 2 weeks. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that Reconciliation Day was maybe 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. And we know the history of Thanksgiving is very bloody. It involved the murder of Indigenous people here in North and South Central America. And so, but to the point, Canadians never started speaking about the horrific things that Europeans and colonizers did to the Indigenous people until they were forced to. I know myself spending some years in the Canadian school system. I didn't know anything about Indigenous or Natives being in Canada. Shoot, I damn near didn't know reserves existed in Canada. It's something that's just not spoken of at all. And so it's only recently, within these last maybe 2 years, where because there's such a fight from the Native Indians in Canada to force education on their people and their history here in Canada. And I actually think there was I forget that committee, but there was a committee formed around 2014 that had to do with fighting for, basically fighting for some of the rights and different social activist rights, or whatever you may call it, of the Indigenous people. That was around back in 2014. And that's where you start hearing about like the Indian Act, the 60s scoop, residential schools, all the different things that is happening to this day to Native Americans here in Canada. But as for Blacks and the history of Blacks in Canada, isn't spoken about at all. I don't know I've never heard anybody, as just a personal experience, I've never heard anybody speak about the history of Blacks in Canada, which is pretty disgusting once you start to realize what really went on here in Canada. And if I could just kind of start off with, or kind of segue into the topic of today's class, I'm just gonna flat out give like a baseline or an overall synopsis of what happened to Blacks and Indigenous here in Canada. And I got a couple articles I'll share that we'll go through, maybe 1 or 2 videos that I'll share. And this is just, again, just to kind of educate Blacks and Hispanics and Native Indians of what went on here in Canada. Okay, so this might even, maybe we'll turn this into a mini series. We'll see. There's so much information to speak about. We'll kind of see where this class and this information kind of leads. But what's important for Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans to know is that slavery in Canada was real. And not only was it real, it was no different than slavery in America. And if we get into some of that specific information, come to find out the very little differences in slavery between Canada and America are things like, they say black slaves in America weren't allowed to read, and that they would have harsh punishments happen to these slaves in America if they were caught reading. Well, black slaves in Canada, including Indigenous slaves in Canada, they were allowed to read. Not only were they allowed to read, but European slave owners believed that black slaves and Indigenous slaves were like children. They were like children and they needed to be taught. And they stressed the importance of literacy on black slaves so that they could learn to read the Bible, so that they could learn to understand Catholicism. And when you start looking into the history of what Catholics did to blacks and Indigenous here in Canada, you're going to see it's just as disgusting, arguably just more diabolical than what they did in the States. And we see glimpses of that, for example, in those residential schools. Don't think that what happened on those residential schools is any different than what Europeans wanted for blacks in Canada. They wanted blacks in Canada to learn how to read so that they could learn to be good Catholics. And what were those Catholic priests doing to Indigenous babies on these residential schools in Canada? They were molesting these kids, sexually abusing these kids, assaulting these kids, abusing these kids, causing these kids to die of be unalived of malnutrition, a whole bunch of things. And so they just did it in the name of Catholicism. Okay, they did it under the name of Catholicism. And that was a lot of what pushed, you could say, quote unquote, the different practices of slavery here in Canada. But just because you're Catholic, don't think that you're a good slave owner. Just because there were European Catholics, don't think that these people were any less evil than somebody who, quote unquote, didn't believe in God over in America. So we're going to get into some of the information, but for today, we're going to give just a brief history on slavery in Canada. Okay, so getting right into it, I'm going to share my screen and we can go over this first article. Again, just to give some information and some light on what went on over here in Canada. Okay, so this is an article from CBC. All right, that we're going to get into. I got the sign-in links in the chat. Make sure you hit those sign-in links. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe our page. Get this information out. Okay, our people absolutely need this knowledge. All right, the Bible says our people are destroyed. My people, the Lord's people, Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. You understand? We're destroyed for a lack of knowledge. We don't have our culture and our identity. We don't know the laws, statutes, and commandments. We don't understand how to keep them. We don't understand how to keep them and how that can help benefit us and make us and assist us in making good decisions in life. Okay, we need to be knowledgeable. All right, the scriptures say, "Study to show thyself approved." You got to study, you got to research, you got to learn. This is what these I.S.U.P. classes are here for. We're here to educate our people. Okay, that's why we're called a school, the Israelite school. Okay, of universal practical knowledge. Practical knowledge. We're going to give you knowledge that you can apply to your life. All right, we're not like a Catholic or a Christian preacher who's just going to tell you to go pray about it. We're going to give you information that you can apply to your life that can help you make good decisions. Okay, and in history class, okay, especially for these next few classes, as we go over the history of Canada, and we start looking into their quote unquote dark history, you're going to start to see who the devil that the Bible speaks of is. And that's almost like a foundational understanding in the I.S.U.P.K. Okay, there's a couple of things. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you're going to learn coming to classes. But one of those things is that the European man, the so-called white man, the oppressor, he is the devil that the Bible speaks of. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen really quick. Just gonna get a quick verse out, and then we'll go into that article. And the reason I'm saying this is because, again, this is the knowledge of the Bible. Okay, this is the knowledge of the Bible, and it's the knowledge that we lack as a people. I believe it's 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. Right? This is what the Bible says. All right. The Bible says the wisdom of this world is foolishness to God. I mean, there's something about this Bible that has a lot of wisdom for us. Okay, it has a lot of knowledge and truth that we can live by. Right? A lot of people like to say that science isn't in the Bible. Science is all over the Bible. Okay, the truth about life is all in the scriptures. It's all in the Bible. The Most High created the heaven and the earth and everything in it. All the people, the land, the sea, the animals. There's no better scientist than the Most High. Most High understands life. When he tells you don't eat pork, it's for a reason. Black man, Hispanic man, Native American man. There's something about that animal that isn't good for you. So we got to come back to the wisdom and knowledge of this Bible. And what does it say in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3? It says, "Let no man deceive you by any means." Right? This is a commandment. You understand? This is an order to the children of God, the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Don't let people deceive you. Don't let people get over on you. Black man, Hispanic man, Native American man. Don't let people deceive you. And all throughout the scriptures, you see different, you have different knowledge in there that teaches you how not to let people get over on you. Teaches you how to love yourself. Teaches you how to care about yourself. Teaches you how to be safe in this world. Says, let no man deceive you. Okay, we're not speaking about some red demon with a pitchfork walking around. We're speaking about men. Don't let people get over on you. Don't let people lie to you. Don't let people deceive you by any means necessary. It's important if you want to have a good life. It's important if you want to make good decisions. It says, "For that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed." Now, I know in the Christian church, they like to say that man of sin, the son of perdition, right, is that red demon with a pitchfork. But according to the Bible, that's far from the truth. It says that man of sin is going to be revealed. You understand that there's a time coming, right, before Christ returns, where that wicked people that are living and walking amongst this earth are going to be revealed. This scripture is speaking about a people. You understand? The scripture is speaking about a man. Who is that man of sin? That man of sin is Esau. That man of sin is the nation of Esau. And their wickedness is going to be revealed on this earth. That's why you saw it just a couple of years ago, and you're going to continually see. You're going to see every news article in the world continue to pop up, revealing the sin of Esau. Why? Because he is a wicked race of people. And when we say in I.S.U.P.K, the oppressor is the devil that the Bible speaks of, it's there to warn you, right? We're there as watchmen to set that alarm, to ring the alarm, let you know of the danger that is around you. We're letting you know that that man of sin, he is being revealed. Since 1969, he has been revealed, and we are going to continue revealing his wickedness in this earth. Okay? And you see in Canada, you see a whole bunch of his wickedness being revealed. All right? The Most High is not going to stop revealing his wickedness, because people need to understand that they can't be deceived by who this man is. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, they need to not be deceived by these people. Okay? And in Canada, blacks in Canada, for blacks, Hispanics, and natives in Canada, for too long has been deceived by these people. Look at what this article says. It says, Canada's slavery secret. Okay, this is an article that was published on CBC. Okay, CBC, that's a Canadian news reporting outlet. Okay, you don't have to trust my words. You don't have to just believe everything that I say. This is published from CBC. A lot of people, and even a lot of people out there, you want to say fake news this, fake news that. Well, we're going to get into the records. Okay, we're going to get into people's record and account of what was taking place during a specific time, during a specific date. 19th century, 18th century, 17th century. Okay, you don't have to take my word for it. You can look up some of these sources and research yourself. Okay, this is from CBC. It says, Canada's slavery secret. And right off the bat, it's like, since when does Canada have a secret of slavery? It's the fact that they're even able to write this as a headline in a news article, let you know something is off. And see, a lot of things happening on this earth are spiritual. And you got to be spiritual to understand some of the things going on. It is the man of sin being revealed. He's going to continually be revealed because blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans need to wake up. Okay, it says Canada's slavery secret, the whitewashing of 200 years of enslavement. Now, I can damn near guarantee, and maybe this is something I should make some new business, to go out in the streets of Canada and start asking people, did you know that Canada had slavery for 200 years in Canada? Do Canadians know, do Black Canadians know that there was slavery in Canada for 200 years? Do Hispanics know that in Canada there was slavery for 200 years? Do Indigenous people know? I can damn near guarantee you 98% of Canadians do not know about the history of slavery in Canada. I can damn near guarantee it. Why? Because this stuff was never taught to Canadians. They don't have this in their school systems. They're not teaching it to kids in any curriculums. Because Canada has no desire for Blacks, Hispanics, and Indigenous people to know the true history of Canada. And you can see that in 2023, only now are they adding, what do they call it? Indigenous Awareness Month. Let me look that up really quick. Let's see what year that was added. Indigenous Awareness Month in Canada. So Salaki, they added it in 2009, it says. In 2009, they added an Indigenous Awareness Month. Why? Because Canadians don't know about Indigenous history. Until 2009, they just started teaching about this stuff. 2021, you start hearing about residential schools in Canada. In 2020, I would love to know who knew what a residential school was in Canada. I don't think anybody knew. I don't think anybody knew it existed. Matter of fact, I remember watching live news streams and casts interviewing people in Toronto on the streets, asking them if they knew about residential schools. And damn near every Canadian said, we didn't know that was here in Canada. We didn't know that existed. Well, let's talk about some of the slavery in Canada. Okay. It says, this article says, the erasure of Blackness. It says Canada's towns, parks, and universities abound with statues and street signs that have immortalized our founding fathers. But there is no sign of the men, women, and children that some of these powerful men enslaved. And some of those things in the States, like, who was our president? There was a president in the States that they always talk about where he was basically writing some laws. Oh, damn, I'm going to butcher that information. Which president? I can't remember which president that was. But he was doing something, it had something to do with speaking about the enslavement of Black people. Meanwhile, he had Black slaves himself. And it's like, these are some of the famous people in America, right? Some of the founding forefathers, as you would say. And it's like they all had slaves. Some of the most powerful people in America had slaves. Well, here we are, we get to Canada, and Canada likes to speak about how great and wonderful some of Canadian founding forefathers were. But they never speak about the slaves that these founding fathers in Canada had. Okay, we're going to get into some of that. Right, quick shout out to the chat. Shalom, bro. Y'all. What's going on? Right, it says, a small wonder then that many of us today are unaware that Indigenous and African peoples were forced into bondage across colonial Canada. Okay. And you can go to the Canadian Encyclopedia itself, and you'll see on the Government of Canada page, it straight out tells you that Canada had slaves for 200 years, Blacks and Indigenous slaves. And it's crazy because the only way you start getting into some of that information is when you start digging deeper into the history of Canada. Because in the history of Canada, they love to speak about the 7-Year War. Okay, that's a very important date in quote unquote Canadian history. And during that 7-Year War, I believe the man's name was like Louis Henry or Sir Louis the 14th, something like that. Okay, we'll get into that history more as we run some more of these classes. But basically, he said having Indigenous slaves was bad for their war. Why? Because they had Indigenous peoples fighting for them, for the French, during that 7-Year War. And so for the morale of their military, having Indigenous slaves was bad for business. Imagine you have Indigenous people fighting in your war, meanwhile they see you enslaving their people. And so during that 7-Year War, they speak about different laws that they started to pass because they didn't want the morale of the Indigenous people to go down so that they could win the war. And as you read some of that history, you find out, oh, wait a minute, Canada had Indigenous slaves. And that's how you start getting into more of the history of Canada. Okay, but you gotta dig through records. You gotta do a lot of reading because Canada isn't gonna just come out and tell you this. And you're gonna see that as we go through this article, how a lot of things in Canadian history is brought to light. Okay, it says, hiding 2 centuries of slavery requires some effort. Right? Imagine that. Imagine a whole nation of people, a whole country, trying to hide 200 years of history. And you can do this, just look this up yourself. Everybody has a quote-unquote Google machine. Look up what was going on in Canada in the 1500s. Type in on your Google machine, how was Canada established as a country? You're not going to find that history. It's not going to be, you're probably going to have to go next to like the 10th page to start seeing some history on what took place in the 1500s, the 1600s, the 1700s inside of Canada. What you're going to see consistently pop up is what Canadian history has always heavily taught. I remember talking to this one brother in Canada, and I was speaking about Thanksgiving and why we shouldn't celebrate it. And I remember this brother was so gung-ho in correcting me, saying how Canadians and Europeans didn't go around just murdering Indigenous people. And that Thanksgiving was really about the colonizers coming together and trading with each other and this and that, as if everybody was just getting along and learning about each other's country, each other's culture. And you go into the history books and you'll see, yes, there were Indigenous people in Canada trading with the French, trading with the British. That's in the history. But what's not in the history is somehow during this time, Indigenous people and Black people in Canada were in doing hard bondage. So how does that make sense? You have the history of Europeans. What Europeans did when they came to Canada, it was damn near like a code. If Europeans found natives in the country, in the land, to enslave them. That's what they would do. They would find natives in North America and they would enslave them. And when they would enslave them and capture them, they would send them to another part of the world. Why? Because if you caught an Indigenous man in, let's say, quote unquote, what is now known as Montreal, okay, which at that time was known as New France, they would catch an Indigenous brother or sister and they would send them from Montreal down to somewhere like Florida. Why? Because the Indigenous man that he just caught was too familiar with the land. And so a lot of Europeans, they're catching Indigenous people in the South and they're selling them on as slaves in Canada. And you have Europeans who are catching Indigenous as slaves in Canada and they're shipping them off to the West Indies. Why? So that the natives would be better slaves. That was a very common practice of Europeans. And you can look up, they had, where was that? The Halifax Harbor, where they're shipping native people from the South over to Halifax, which I believe is in Nova Scotia today. They're shipping Blacks to Nova Scotia to do hard bondage and servitude because that would make better slaves. This was being done in Canada. Okay? So when this article says Canada's hiding 2 centuries of slavery requires some effort, yeah, you're damn right that takes some effort. It takes a lot of effort. And Canadians should be asking themselves, why is this history so hidden? If Canada is such a peace-loving place, such a peaceable place, why is all this history being hidden? Okay, it says, and it is a collective silence that historian Afua Cooper calls the erasure of Blackness. There's perhaps no better symbol of erasure than an invisible cemetery. Right? Imagine that. Where's the cemetery of all the Black slaves that were here in Canada? Right? We started finding all these dead bodies show up on residential schools, and we started uncovering some of the history of Canada. Where's all the dead bodies of the Black slaves that were in Canada? Where's the graveyard of the Indigenous slaves that were here in Canada. And how come it's never spoken of? Right? This article goes on to say an invisible cemetery. Every year, the Black Coalition of Quebec organizes a grim pilgrimage to an unmarked grave. Right? Why does that sound so familiar? I remember constantly hearing for the last 2 years, unmarked grave found here, unmarked grave found there, unmarked grave, largest unmarked grave site in British Columbia on Kamloops Residential School. All these different unmarked graves. It's interesting that Canadians are so scared of their history, that Europeans are so scared of their history that shoot, they're not even marking these graves. Shoot, I know in the States, a lot of people, you know what I mean, like through different quote unquote, they call it Black Power groups and Black Pride this, Black Pride that. Some people start looking up their history. And as they start looking into their history, a lot of brothers in the States, a lot of so-called blacks in the States, they're coming to realize, oh shoot, my ancestors are actually indigenous. We were actually native to this land. We weren't brought here as slaves. Because they're looking up the records of the slave owners. They're looking up the last names of the slave owners and the plantations that their families came from. And they're tracking down the different slave ports that their ancestors were brought to over in the Americas. Well, where's all the history in Canada of the slave ports? Where's all the history of the different plantation owners here in Canada? As we read and as we start learning more about Canadian history, you're going to see that slavery was just as real in Canada as it was in America. And these are some good questions to ask. Okay, this Black Coalition in Quebec, they're doing grim pilgrimages to unmarked graves. I mean, we don't know who these people are that are dead, buried in the ground. It says about an hour from Montreal, outside the village of Saint Armand, close to a dozen slaves are said to be buried near a large whale-shaped boulder. Dozen slaves. So Canada has found this quote-unquote cemetery of unmarked graves. We don't know who these people were. But we do know that these were slaves. And it's interesting, and I'm going to bring out, it might be in this article that shows you how they know. If not, I have some other information to show how Canadians have learned a little about this history, but it comes through a lot of digging. Okay, it comes through a lot of digging, and like I say, like the Most High said, that man of sin must be revealed. Okay, the crimes of what these Europeans did to blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans in Canada, it is being revealed. You understand? All the crimes that he does throughout the earth, it is being revealed. You understand? Having things like the internet where you're able to look up all these different things, all the vast amount of information that's out there and accessible. Okay, whereas, a couple of years ago, you had to go to a library to get this information. Now you can look up a PDF of a book online, just with a quick search. And you can read and read and read. Sometimes, you can go to Amazon.com and order a history book. Amazon Prime, that book will be sent to you within 24 hours. All this vast wealth of information just at your fingertips. Man of sin is being revealed. Okay, it says little is known of the people enslaved by the Luke family. Loyalists who fled the United States in the 1780s. And thus, again, check out some of these dates. This is the 1780s. Okay, you had blacks fleeing slavery in America to get to Canada, and they're just being enslaved. Okay. It says, and while the family cemetery still stands, its tombstones bent with age, their slaves left behind a trail of disappearing clues. This is Canada. You got to follow some small clues to figure out all the different atrocities that's happened here, because Canadian doesn't teach the history, doesn't teach all the disgusting things that they've done to the children of God here in Canada. Okay, it says plowing these fields in the 1950s, a farmer's tractor ground to a halt on human bones. Okay, imagine that. There's some farmer out there just farming his land, and his tractor goes over some human bones. It says elsewhere, they might have been studied and carefully preserved, but these remains were tossed aside and lost. So this man who goes over some human bones, these human bones just get tossed out. They just get thrown in the garbage. We're not going to talk about what just happened. We're not going to talk about what we just found. This is the consistency that Canadians, the Canadian government, the powers that be, continue to show us. It says oral history has it that they are the bones of the Luke family slaves. This is backed by the preliminary findings of Quebec anthropologist Roland Vial. Once pointing to these vast rolling fields was a sign that read Negro Cemetery. So once upon a time, there was a sign that said Negro Cemetery. This is an hour drive out of the city of Montreal. And that sign was pointing to this farmer's land, saying that this was a cemetery for Negroes. This is in Canada. And what does it say? That sign is now gone. It says the sign was removed, replaced, and removed again, as though to extirpate the remnants of an embarrassing past. Right? What else would it be? We're going to hide human bones that we find. We're going to hide a sign that we found. How come in Canada nobody talks about this? It says, beyond the thick woods of St. Armand, our history has been camouflaged across the country. All right, this is a quote from Charmaine Nelson. This is a McGill professor of art history, I believe the University of McGill's in Montreal. So Charmaine Nelson said, what does it take to erase 200 years of history from the collective consciousness of a nation? Okay, that's a great question. This is a professor of art at the McGill University who's aware of the 200 years of slavery in Canada. Let's keep reading. It says, she says, slavery is seldom featured in Canadian museums, except to extol the virtues of Canadians who helped runaways escaping north. The theme gets short shrift even at a museum named after the owner of at least 17 slaves, Francois Babyhouse in Windsor. Right? Which is right on to what I said, at least my experience in Canada, where I knew about the Underground Railway, the history that was taught to me of black slaves in Canada, or not even black slaves in Canada, but just black history itself in Canada. They always love to speak about the Underground Railway. Hey, Shalom, Khan, Slack. I'm going to send that to you right now. Slack, you give me one moment. Okay, Khan. The Officer Adia, that link sent to your email. Okay, so Slack, where were we? Right, so yeah, like I was saying, so like I know my experience in Canada, I knew about the Underground Railway, and I was always taught that Canada was a safe haven for blacks. It was a safe place for blacks, and they could flee the South and flee America and get out of slavery. That's what was taught to me. No Canadian teacher ever taught me that Canada had slaves. I didn't know that. But this is a narrative that a lot of people are, that not a lot of people, that everybody is told in Canada. Says a 19th century Upper Canada official, Francois Baby, is among hundreds of slave owners. Do you hear that? According to the Dictionary of Des Esclaves by late historian Marcel Trudel. Okay. This man right here, he's among hundreds. Okay, hundreds of slave owners, not just one. There's not just one cemetery of quote unquote Negroes in Canada. You're going to learn as we go through some of these classes, there are thousands upon thousands of slaves in Canada. It was Canadian law that if you purchased a slave, that the slave's children also belong to them. This is in Canadian law. Canada had thousands of slaves, both black and Indigenous. Okay. All right, let's move on just a little bit, just for time. Matter of fact, I'm gonna share a quick video. Let's share a quick video of what a black historian, you could quote unquote say her outlook on, or her synopsis on why blacks don't understand about slavery in Canada. Okay, there's definitely a lot of that article. Let me see if I can share that. Definitely lots of information. I want to stick to some key points just for today's class. Okay. So we're going to share this video really quick. We got two videos I'm going to share. Okay, two videos I'm going to share on this because, like I say, the information is there. It's just not something that is always going to be spoken about. Right? It's damn near never spoken about because Canada has no interest in telling you the history of slavery in Canada. Okay, let's play this.
Why do you think the story of Blacks in Quebec and Canada, what do you think it was hidden? How come people don't know about it, most people?
Well, I think it doesn't fit in with.
Right, let me pause this. Hey, Salaki, hey, Shalom, everyone. YAHANNA, I.S.U.P.K.
Hey, Shalom, appreciate you. What's going on?
Hey, not much, everyone. This is Salaki, if I may. This is a perfect time to bring you in, because I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on this video right here. She's gonna kind of give like a brief synopsis on her opinion as to why Blacks don't know about slavery in Canada.
Okay.
Come on, let's play this.
Why do you think the story of Blacks in Quebec and Canada, what do you think it was hidden? How come people don't know about it, most people?
Well, I think it doesn't fit in with their concept of Quebec history or even Canadian history. I think that a lot of energy and writing has been about how Quebec is different, how Canada is different from the United States, and of course our singular difference is that we didn't have slavery, at least that's what they said. And it just continues to perpetuate the myth.
It's lucky, if I may. She comes right out and says that Canadians say there was no history. Not even that it's hidden, but she came right out and said that Canada taught her, and through the school systems and different things that there may be, that it's not even hidden, but Canadians didn't have slaves, right? Which to me, again, is a heavy point, because it's not even that there's a narrative of Canada isn't just, it's that they're not speaking about it, but they've actually done something to hide this history. And that's why that article I was reading was so heavy, because CBC posed that question. That journalist that authorized that paper said, what would it take for a nation to hide 200 years of slavery? What did it take Canada to hide 200 years of slavery? Like that article, we're reading about human bones that are disappearing. We're reading about signs that are taken down, where signs that are pointing to Negro cemeteries are taken down. It's showing you that there's actually work being done to hide the history of slavery in Canada. And that's to on the point as why you don't know. Yeah. So likely.
That Canada, to perpetuate the myth that Canada was perfect or that Canada was welcoming and had a moral stand that was higher than that of the Americans. It helps to define us as a nation. We often use the Underground Railway and the fact that American fugitive slaves came into Canada and they were free here once they stepped on Canadian soil. So we use that story to perpetuate the myth of Canada as having been slave-free, which they were at the time that the fugitive slaves came into Canada. But in doing so, we erased 200 years of slavery prior to that, very conveniently, and it makes our history nice and clean. And
yeah, and that's exactly, again, my experience in Canada. It's like I was taught about the Underground Railway, right, which is what she's speaking about, and I'm damn near sure every Black person in Canada knows that Black people were running to Canada to quote unquote escape slavery. That history is known. And like this sister said at that time, yeah, maybe there was some free slaves in Canada. But what about the 200 years prior to that? And that's exactly what we're going to get into in these next couple classes. So make sure you tune in every Monday from 5 to 7, because we're going to get into some of these 200 years of slavery here in Canada. Okay. But yeah, so we're going to bring out that history. And this is what the sister is saying. It's like, you teach a people that, hey, this is where you came. This is where you could go to escape slavery. And as I was researching, which I thought again was funny, is the only reason that Canadians even teach and speak about that part of slavery or that part of history is because, again, Canadians were forced to. And why were they forced to? There's a sister named Chloe Cooley. Okay, Chloe Cooley, and we're going to speak about her story, who was a slave here in Canada, over in Niagara Falls. And because slave owners in Canada knew that the emancipation of slavery was being spoken about, you had a lot of slaves starting to kind of start an uprise. Canadian slaves knew that freedom might be coming soon, because the emancipation of slavery was happening all over the States. And so there was a sister who was in slavery in Niagara Falls, who, because she knew the emancipation of slavery was being spoken of, she thought this was a good time for her to run. She thought this was a good time for her to run from her slave master and potentially find freedom. And so she ran out of Canada to the States. And what did the slave owner in Niagara Falls do? They caught that sister. They tied her up. They beat her and abused her like they did every other slave in America. And that part of history is spoken about because other Canadian slave owners were saying, we don't, quote unquote, agree with this treatment of slaves.
Right.
And that's how you start hearing about Black slaves being free here in Canada. But again, we're going to get into all that. There's tons of information that we're going to bring out. But from what I'm reading and from what I'm seeing, I don't think you would ever hear of slavery if Canada didn't have to speak about it. I don't think you would ever hear about residential schools if things weren't being found and dug up.
Right.
And again, this is why I say like the Most High said, the wisdom of this world is foolishness to God. He told you the man of sin was going to be revealed, and he's being revealed over and over. Come on, Salaki, so you want to say something?
So like, if I may, like what this sister brought up, like, is really powerful, because you understand, like, all people think that Canada is really like a place of the land of milk and honey. You understand? Like, we come from the islands and we come, like, you understand, well, we, instead of going to the US, we rather come to Canada. Well, you understand, there's not as much like KKK racism, like, you understand. Meanwhile, the history behind Canada is something that is full of atrocities. You understand? Like, I know they pay a lot of Black people, you understand, to hide the history as well. But the story of Canada is, man, you understand, like, all people were leaving the US and the islands to come to Canada, kind of find out that Canada was worse than all of these places. And a lot of them wanted to go back. A lot of them wanted to go back because Canada, you know what I'm saying, since there was not really a, you know what I'm saying, like a majority of slaves or people, you understand, that overwatchers, you understand, that was going and overwatch was going on with the slave, just like the US and the Caribbean. So a lot of, you understand, Canadians were doing whatever they want with those slaves. You know what I'm saying? Nobody would have stopped them. They were doing whatever they wanted. Just like I have a book over here, a good book in French, right? I'll chop it up, you know what I'm saying, like, you know what I'm saying, with you, you know what I'm saying, about this book, Les Noirs du Québec, which I bring all the time, right? I don't know if y'all could see it. Les Noirs du Québec. the blacks of Quebec. When you read the stories about the slaves over here, they're speaking about slaves over here. There were slaves, Akim. You understand? Let me put it to water, please. Understand? This book, if y'all could get it, you know what I'm saying, in English. So like, can y'all see it? Can y'all see it? Okay, there you go. You understand? If y'all could get it in English, you understand, by Daniel Gay. There were slaves, Akim, that were working in the cold until their toes fell off.
Okay.
Until their toes fell off, man. Kids and kids at that point, not just grown men, kids also. You understand? And nobody would have tell those Canadians nothing because there was no regulation really over here. It was just like, you understand, you do as you wish with your slave. You understand? And this is why we found, you understand, like the native Indian also went through the same thing over here because, you understand, the native Indian were slaves as well. But what Canada is doing is something really evil. Evil is to hide the atrocities that they've been doing to Black, Hispanics, and Native Indian, especially Black and Native Indian that were living over here. They were doing really some evil things, experiment on the other level that, you understand, like scientists and doctors of old school were doing, you understand, on slaves, and nobody's talking about it. You understand? But we will in the UPK. You understand? But what that sister did, you understand, is really powerful. And I salute the sister, you understand, because she has guts. She has
Sure.
cojones, you understand, like we say in Spanish, because a lot of our people are afraid to speak against Canada. A lot of our people are afraid to speak, you know what I'm saying, because Canada seems to be like a place, you know what I'm saying, like I said, like with the milk and honey, you know what I'm saying, everybody gets together. You know what I'm saying, if I speak against it, you know what I'm saying, if I speak about slavery, I might be deemed racist. I might deem, you know what I'm saying, like, you know what I'm saying, I might deem something that's not actual the norm. But she was, you know what I'm saying, she was on point and to say, you know what I'm saying, like Canada is hiding the history. And the reason why they're hiding history is because Canada is a evil place. Just like the US, just like everywhere where we've been slaves, where we've been in captivity. It is an evil and disgusting place. It's like
Come on, sir. Salaki, if I could add a small thing, they were calling slaves were speaking about what they called it the Great White North because slaves were getting buried under the snow. They had slaves being buried under 6 feet of snow in Canada, and that's a lot of the history of Black slaves in Canada. And so it's so heavy to bring out what you brought out. Shoot, I was reading earlier too. There was a sister who was just found, I think, a day or two ago, again on the Highway of Tears. And how was she found? She was found frozen solid, right? Just like a lot of those babies on those residential schools, those kids were running away from the persecution. They were running away from all the evil those Catholic priests and nuns were doing to them. And what happens in Canada? You just freeze to death. And that's a lot of the slaves here in Canada. So, yeah, I definitely got to check out that book. Salaki said.
Salakia, it is in French. I'll see if we could get an English version of the book. You know, saying if not, what I will do, like since you have the history class and we have the history class, I'll chop in with you. You know, saying give you the stories. You understand? You check it in English, but the same story will be available in English as well. It should be available in English as well. So this book is an excellent book. You understand, where you have the slaves, and they tell you, you understand, like they got statistic, they got everything. You understand, they got everything in this book. You understand, that talks about the slave in Quebec, but that's only in Quebec. But I'm trying to find, I mean, all the way to Canada. You understand, like we were slaves all the way. You understand, like to northern Canada. So, you understand. But Canada is doing something evil to the core because. And this is why, like, you understand, what we are in a place where there's a lot of libraries. Like everybody go to the libraries, but you cannot find a book that talks about Black being the Jews, Black being the children of Israel, or you understand, us being, you understand, the children of Israel. Why? Because Canada hide the history. Okay. Matter of fact, I have books that talks about the Native Indian being, you understand, the children of Israel. It's a lot. Like this book, which is in English, which is I suggest everybody to find. You understand the 10 tribes of Israel, and below it says, can you see it? I know I have the green screen. It's a look. You understand? It say all the true history of the Native American Indians, showing that they are the descendants of these 10 tribes. I try to find this book in every library I go in. For some reason, I cannot find this book in the library. Meanwhile, we have libraries in every corner in this empire. In Montreal, there's library everywhere. I cannot find this book. Why? Because they are hiding the fact that, you understand, that we are the chosen people of God. And not only that, they are hiding the fact of all the atrocities that they've done, you understand, on those 12 tribes. It's a lot to appreciate.
Absolutely. Let me share one more video from this same sister, because she has a lot of information that's interesting, and it was she's actually what would I call it? She was a part of putting together something called the Black Hands film, and that won an award in Canada for one of the best documentaries. And so that's definitely a good documentary to check out. A lot of information there, but there's some good historians in Canada doing some good work, digging up a lot of good information, because this stuff needs to absolutely be spoken of. Okay, so this is one more video from her. Let's just hear what she has to say.
It really gives people in this country a sense that, other than the French and the British, that there weren't any other people. Everybody else came to this country at their largesse. It was a privilege. They don't really understand. When you look at slavery, it tells you something very different about the way that people interacted at the time. And it tells you a very different story of the kinds of people that built this country. So it wasn't just French and English in terms of the drama of the Canadian history, but rather it was really a conflagration of a lot of different communities and cultures that came together, some willingly and some not. So slavery is part of that not willing aspect of our history. And I think the legacy is that I am forever seen as other. My family's been here for many, many generations, and yet I am constantly asked where I came from. The assumption is I'm not Canadian. And even when I tell people that I am Canadian, they will very easily, and quite comfortably ask, but where did your mother come from? Or your parents, your grandparents? And if I say Canada, Canada, they get confused. They stand there and, literally scratch their head. They're quite befuddled at that. And when I explain that my family history goes back centuries, they have to pause and kind of contemplate that, because nobody told them that. Certainly their image of Canadians is white. They don't see people of color, whether it was the Chinese, the Japanese, the blacks. Even the Amerindians are often treated as if they are other to the Canadian narrative, right? And so everybody else that is not of European descent, Northern European descent, is considered other.
Now, Salakia, I thought that was interesting too, because again, that fits the narrative of the quote unquote Black experience in Canada. I know a Black person in Canada is not allowed to be Canadian. Everybody's gonna look at you like, what are you talking about? No, where are you really from? Where are your parents from? You understand? I know I've been asked that 100 times. I can't tell anybody anything but Jamaican in Canada, because for Canadians, it's just that's what's understood. And where does that come from? That's taught to us. You understand? That's taught to Canadians, the whole society of Canada, right? Like what she said was so on point. If you're not quote unquote white, like she said, Northern European descent, you're not Canadian. You understand? And when you go along with that narrative, again, you kind of have to wonder then what is a Canadian? You understand? And you can't just find that history. It's not so easily accessible. You got to do some research. You understand? Because they'll tell you the history is that Europeans came over to Canada, they traded with the natives, they got along with the natives, and they just settled here. You understand? But they're not going to tell you that they had 200 plus years of slavery. They're not going to tell you about all the murder of the Indigenous and the blacks here in Canada. You don't know that history. But what you do know is that you're other. You understand? You do know that if you're not European, you're an immigrant. And imagine that for the blacks like herself, who has generation after generation of being in Canada, where she's just trying to look for an identity. And in 2023, she's classified as other. She was probably here. Her family's probably been here, damn near 400 or 500 years. And you have a European who comes over from Scotland. Maybe they've been in Canada for 50 years, and they're considered Canadian. They don't classify as other, which is crazy to what that does to a people. I know Officer Adia brings that up all the time, and the government of Canada tells you itself the effects of slavery, the effects of colonialism, right? The effects of not knowing who you are as a people. Not having a language, not having an identity. It just absolutely demoralizes you, right? You have no sense of self-worth or self-esteem. You have no knowledge of where you come from, what language you spoke or anything. And the effects that has on people, just look at us today. You understand? Just look at us filling up the prison systems. Look at us, look at all the, the suicide rate on those reserves, right? All the different things that we go through as a people. Concert, what?
So like if I just may add something, right? Like, you understand, I'll be right quick. You understand? But lately we've been seeing like everybody saying free Palestine, right? So why are they saying free Palestine? Like, you understand, because the Jewish man is in Palestine doing all the type of atrocities to the Palestinian, right? So we have, like, you understand, lately, I don't know if it happened in Toronto, but in Montreal, they blocked the whole highway, you understand, the highway that's, you understand, the whole highway, you understand, a bridge that goes, you understand, from the island of Montreal to the, you understand, to Longueuil. They blocked that, you understand, to the other side, you understand, to the other island. They blocked that, and they were saying free Palestine. Well, the thing is, I look at every one of these white folks as hypocrites, because how are you going to say free Palestine because the Jewish man supposedly, you understand, take over, you understand, the land of Israel, which doesn't belong to the Palestinian nor the Jewish man, but to Black, Hispanics, and Native Indian. But how are you going to say free Palestine because of the Jewish man? Meanwhile, you are in a land that doesn't belong to you. And you don't even want to recognize, you understand, the owners of the land. You don't want to even talk about what you have done to those people, you understand, for you to be able to have an apartment, to have a house, to go to you understand, to the movie theater, to go to the restaurant, to enjoy your summer, to go slide down the mountain during the winter. You don't even want to talk about what you have done to these people, man. Yet you're going to scream free Palestine. Yet those Native Indians are in captivity and on their own land by you people. Shalak.
Damn right. I'm gonna get into this last article and then share a couple scriptures. Okay, because like what Officer Adia is bringing out is what we're gonna bring out in these history classes. All the history of the slaves and different things that Canada has done, we're gonna get into all of it. You understand? But what's important, I'm just kind of setting the stage, is that Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians need to understand that this stuff went on in Canada. You understand? This stuff was real. These are real stories. This is real history. And it's stuff that's never going to be taught to you unless you get in this class. You understand? Unless you get in this class every Monday night, you are not going to know about the history of your people. You're not going to know about how these people truly feel about you, how they're treating you today, right? Like some Officer Adia brought out earlier, and Officer Zabadia brought out, you have Black immigrants coming to Canada who they quickly realized, you understand, how oppressive this place was for them. And what Officer Zabadia brought out not too long ago, just look at Black farmers today. Look at Jamaican farmers in Canada. They have, what do they call it? Like all their sewage system just flooding in the huts that they're living in here in Canada. Like their living conditions are terrible. And they're doing like 6 months of work, 7 months of work in Canada, and they're being sent back to Jamaica. Right? I'm not going to get too deep into that, but again, it's just look up the Black farmers in Canada. Look up Jamaican farmers in Canada. The way they're treating us today is disgusting. The information they're hiding from our people is disgusting. You understand? The things that they're continually doing to us are disgusting and oppressive. And the same oppression that Blacks are going through in America is the same oppression Blacks are going through here in Canada. Right? It's the same thing. Like even that timeline, Officer Adia, that you were bringing out, like you had the first Black labor union that happened in Canada. I think it was around like 1956. And that Black union was created from Blacks who were working as porters in Canada. My grandfather on my dad's side from Jamaica came from Jamaica to be a porter in Canada. My mom's dad, my grandfather on both sides, they were both porters in Canada. And they know about the disgusting treatment of porters in Canada. That was the only job that a Black man could get back in the 1940s, back in the 1930s. Because every job wasn't available to them. Okay, we're not going back thousands of years. We're going back 60, 70 years. Black people had to be porters, and Black people fought for their rights as porters. The first Black union was set up because they're fighting for fair wages. They're fighting for fair treatment here in Canada in the 1960s. You had a sister who was over in, I think, Vancouver. I think her name was Viola Davis. What do they teach you in the States? They teach you about Rosa Parks. They teach you about the fight that Rosa Parks had during all the segregation in the States. And what did Rosa Parks do? She refused to sit at the back of the bus. Well, in Canada, what do they call Viola Davis? They call her the Black Rosa Parks. Because 20 years before Rosa Parks, Viola Davis was fighting white people to sit inside of a white movie theater. You understand? These things have been going on in Canada, and it's no different from the States. Right? So this last article I'm going to go through, I'm just going to quickly scan through a couple of things just to speak on, right, some of the slavery here in Canada. It says, This is an article from the humanrights.ca. Okay, this was a Canadian Museum for Human Rights. And it says the story of Black slavery in Canadian history. Right, even at the top it says slavery was part of Canada's colonial nation building for over 200 years. Right, what do they say in the States? What do they say in America all the time? Blacks and Indigenous built America. Off the blood, sweat, and tears of Blacks and Indigenous, they built up America. They built up that country. Well, guess what, Canada? It was no different here. You had over 200 years of Blacks and Indigenous slaves, and they worked for free. And that's how Canada was established to be the country that it is today. Okay, that's what slavery was. It says, Canada takes pride in the history of the Underground Railroad. We celebrate being a destination for freedom-seeking enslaved Americans fleeing to the north. But Canada also has its own long history of slavery, and the legacy of slavery lives on in anti-Black racism in Canada today. And what is that telling you? Is that, again, the only reason that slavery is being spoken about is because of groups like Black Lives Matter, because of the I.S.U.P.K, because of different groups that are fighting for Blacks. You understand? It's the only reason that people are digging into the history of Black people in Canada. It's not something they're doing on their own. It's not something that they care to educate the people on. They don't give a damn what they did to you in slavery. They don't give a damn about your history. But only because of anti-Black racism groups is the legacy of slavery living on. Right? It says practices of enslavement in what is now Canada predate the arrival of Europeans. And so what does that whole thing tell you about? They love to paint this picture of Indigenous people being savages. They love to paint this picture of Indigenous people just having no morals, no ethics, no moral code, just savages. That's what Canada would have you believe, right? And this is why it tells you that practices of enslavement in what is now Canada predate the arrival of Europeans. And they like to paint this picture as if it less deifies them as a people. Right? Slacky outside. Don't we always hear that? You tell white people that, or Slacky, you tell the oppressor Europeans that you had Blacks in slavery for how many years? Don't they love to always say, well, Black people had Blacks in slavery? Don't they always say that, well, Indigenous people enslaved Blacks and they always like to paint this picture as if, well, we're not that bad. We're not that evil because the whole world was practicing slavery. That's what they love to say, and that's what they're doing right here. Right? They say some Indigenous peoples enslaved prisoners taken in war. Europeans brought a different kind of slavery to North America, however. Right? They say Indigenous people were catching Europeans and they were enslaving Europeans as if almost to take away what Europeans did to Indigenous people. I don't know. I would love for somebody to show me a history book of Indigenous people having Europeans in slavery for 400 years.
So like a priest, they were fighting against them. You know what I'm saying? They were trying to protect their life. I got a picture where, you know what I'm saying, they had to scalp one of them. You know what I'm saying? They had to scalp them. You know what I'm saying? I have a picture where they took one, you know what I'm saying, one of these Edomite as a baby, you know what I'm saying, they scalped it. Why? Because of the trauma that they received from the end of, you understand, of those Edomites, from the trauma, from the, you understand, abuse that they received. Native Indian welcomed the white man. You understand? When you read about the, you understand, what the so-called oppressor did, they came over here, you understand, with no sense of hygiene. There was no disease over here. They brought the disease in America. Understand? They were walking, you understand? You could read some history book and where they say, well, the Native Indian had to burn incense after a oppressor walked by, because they would have never take showers. They didn't want to take showers. You understand? Just like cat. Cat are afraid of water. They were just like cat, afraid of water, not taking showers. Native Indian had to burn incense. You understand? If you work with Hamites today, you might get the drift. You might get, you understand what I'm talking about. You understand what they were, you understand, going through, because I work with Hamites, and trust me, it's unbearable. You understand? But those Native Indians show the oppressor how, you understand, how to even take showers, how to survive during the winter. The oppressor couldn't survive during the winter because everything he was planting wasn't growing for him. And still today, it doesn't grow. This is why they have to use GMO. You understand? Native Indian took care of the so-called oppressor. And in return, they slaughtered them.
Huh.
You understand? They unalived them. They raped them. And the Native Indian, of course, they had to fight back. Just like the Haitians fought back. Just like the Jamaicans fought back. Just like, you understand, like South America fought back. We had to fight back. Otherwise, it would have been, you understand, our lives. Otherwise, me and you and, you understand, our children wouldn't be here today. You understand? Because all the oppressor wanted to do is exterminate us. You understand? Take everything we have, and even our lives. That's what they really wanted. And that's what they're trying to do today. But thankfully, we have a God that's for us. We have Yahweh that watches over us. And Yahweh said, well, you know what? As long as you see the sun and the moon, you understand? The children of Israel will be alive. They will never be exterminated. That's a precept. That's a lot of precept.
Throw out a say.
Shoot.
Let me jump down. I just want to highlight a couple of things, right? Here's a part where it says, what was the transatlantic slave trade? It says, in the 15th century, European colonial powers began the large-scale practice of transporting enslaved people from Africa. Slave traders shipped them under horrifying conditions across the Atlantic. Colonial authorities and landowners forced them to serve as slave labor in the Caribbean and in North and South America. You understand? This is what the European did. This is what the oppressor did. There's not a story of indigenous people going over to Northern Europe, putting Europeans like cattle inside of massive slave ships, shipping them across the earth and enslaving them for hundreds of years. You understand? That Canadian law said, if you buy a slave, your children are also slaves. And your children after that are also slaves. That's Canadian law. You understand? Indigenous people were not doing this to Europeans. Like Officer Addy, I said, indigenous people were protecting themselves from the evil that came to their shores. Right? It says, a pattern emerged called triangular trade. European merchants brought trade goods from Europe to Africa. In Africa, they exchanged their goods for enslaved people. In the Americas, the surviving enslaved people were sold, and goods produced by slave labor were carried back to Europe for sale. All right, let me jump down. So that's just telling you, right, what the transatlantic slave trade was. Right now, this is an important part for Canadian history. Okay, and this is something that I encourage brothers and sisters to look into. Look at slavery in New France. You understand? And check out the map of what was considered New France in North America. You're going to see that was almost all of Eastern, well, not Eastern or Western, that's Eastern, almost all of Eastern North America is what was considered New France. You understand? That didn't stop at the border of where the border of Canada and the US meet today. New France covered all of Eastern North America. You understand? That's where France colonized. That's where they came in and colonized. And so we're going to read about slavery in New France. Right? It says the colony of New France was founded in the early 1600s. You understand? Again, the colony of New France was founded in the early 1600s. And when was that underground railroad going on? That was the early 1800s. That underground railroad, you had black slaves, quote unquote, fleeing the Americas to Canada from around 1800 to 1830. But New France was established in the early 1600s. And this is where you get that over 200 years of slavery. Okay? It says it was the first major European colonial settlement in what is now Canada. Slavery was a common practice in the territory. When New France was conquered by the British in 1758 to 1760, records revealed that approximately 3,600 enslaved people had lived there since its beginnings. The majority of them were indigenous, often called panis, which is another thing for brothers and sisters to look up. What is panis? You understand? You start looking at the history of panis, you're going to get a whole load of history books pop up. You understand? Because these are things that we're taught here in Canada. Okay, and Slovakia, that number they say when the British took over, they're noting that there's around 3,600 enslaved people that have been there since the beginning. Let me tell you right now, that number is well beyond 3,600 people. You understand? They're just saying that this is what we're seeing when we're taking it over. And New France is just one small part of Canada. You understand? Slovakia. I wonder if I can let me see if I can bring up an image of what New France was on a map. Yeah, let me share my screen on this really quick. Just so that everybody can understand what New France, quote unquote, looked like. Okay, so this is an image of New France. When you see the blue, right, you're seeing North America. Okay, you're seeing North America. Everywhere where you see blue, that is what they considered New France from the 1600s. Let's see if I can make that bigger. I wish I could make that bigger. Okay, Slovakia. That's about as big as I can make it. I don't know if you can see it so well, but this is what was considered New France.
So like a priest, unless if you have it as a picture on your device, you won't be able to make it bigger over here. Unless if you go to the setting and then you understand, like put bigger, you understand, the font or the lettering. You understand? It will tell you, you understand. There you go. You understand?
This is
that's
about,
better. You gotta have it as a picture.
Sir. Come on, the water. So they have New France is
Roundabout.
that's damn near that's damn near half of what we see as quote unquote North America today. Right? Right? You have damn near all of Louisiana, upper Louisiana. You have from what is that? From like Ontario all the way to Newfoundland. Right? What is that? I think that's Alberta, parts of Alberta, parts of Saskatchewan, all that area from the west all the way to Newfoundland. Okay? That was considered New France. And that is where slavery took place in Canada. Right? And then even as you go to Upper Canada, you start looking into some of the more northern parts. All that blue area, that is what was considered New France. Okay? And then even some of those red areas, that was considered New Britain. And don't get it twisted, Britain also had slaves. In New Britain, you had blacks and indigenous people in slavery. Okay? And so this is the area that this article is speaking about. Okay.
And so like if I may, with the picture that you just showed also, and we see like Louisiana, and you could tell, you know what I'm saying, when you know about American history, they talk about the Louisiana Purchase, where the USA, you understand, purchased Louisiana from the French, because the French was ruling over there, you understand, and the French had who? Levites, you understand, and this is why, you understand, in Louisiana there's a big community that speak French and or speak Creole, you understand, because they have, you understand, those same people that, you understand, you see in Haiti, they had them also in Louisiana as slaves. You understand? They had those same tribes over there as slaves as well. You understand? But what you're seeing on the map right now is the three main players, you understand, that took part of the, you understand, the three main Edomites that took part of the slavery. You see Spain, you see France, and you see, you understand, England. You understand, the three main players of the slavery. You understand? You don't see Portugal. Portugal is more, you understand, South America as well. But you understand, like, these are the three main players that took part of the slavery. You understand? And they will have to pay. You understand? Today, once again, I'm gonna say, we say free Palestine today. Where's Spain? Give back the money that, you understand? Give back the money that you took from those slaves.
Right.
England, give back the money that you took from the slave. France, well, some of you, and you understand, like, you understand, in America, in USA, some of you, you understand, like redneck and everything. You understand, French people. You understand, you understand, children of French. A lot of you are and don't even know it. You think you are different. You think you come from England. Nah, a lot of you are French. A lot of you are Spaniards as well. You understand? Well, that will come, you understand, further in history class.
Damn right. Yeah, we're gonna talk about the Spain. We're gonna talk about the British. Yeah, we're gonna talk about everybody. Okay. Because slavery was very real in Canada. And it was no different from the States. And this is why they had just read, they outlined in this article, they're just speaking about the transatlantic slave trade. Because there's no difference between American slaves and Canadian slaves. The transatlantic slave trade encompassed all of this. Okay, every time you hear about the transatlantic slave trade, that's including Canada. All right. So this goes on to say, where was it? It says the majority of them were indigenous, often called Panis. Black enslaved people were also present because of the transatlantic slave trade. It says King Louis XIV authorized the importing of enslaved Black people to New France in 1689. at the request of the colonial government. You understand? King Louis XIV, he wanted Canada built up. That's what slaves were for. Slaves were purchased. You had human beings being purchased so that they could go and do hard bondage, hard labor, so that they could give Canadian slave owners free labor and built up the kingdom that they wanted to build up, right? Built up the country that they wanted to build. That happened here in Canada. That's what the transatlantic slave trade was about. It said New France passed laws that explicitly legalized slavery and defined slaves as property, and thus as having no rights. Black man, Indigenous man in Canada, you had no rights. You were a slave no different than any slave in America. Any slave story you heard in America happened in Canada. All of the disgusting things that Willie Lynch taught, right, over in the Cayman Islands and all the different islands, Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, the Dominican, all those things that those slave owners were teaching other slave owners how to be good slaves and practice all the horrific things that they did to our people. All of that was done in Canada. Okay, right. It was no different. No difference. These slave owners in Canada were no different than any slave owner. They looked at you as property. They didn't look at you as a human being. Okay, you had no rights. And that's what was done to you here in Canada. All right, it says a set of regulations called the Code Noir governs slavery in most French colonies. It's unclear if the Code Noir formally applied in New France, but it strongly influenced the customs and practice of slavery there.
So that's a lie, because it was implied in New France because the Code Noir is a French word for the black code. So most definitely was implied, you know what I'm saying, like implied or used where slaves were, you know what I'm saying, where, you know what I'm saying, slave that was being ruled by the French were that was being used in 80. Everywhere that you see that French, you know what I'm saying, slave that were ruled by the French, they use the Code Noir. You understand? One of the Code Noir rule is, you know what I'm saying, to give them Christianity.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? One of the rules is to give them Christianity. So everywhere that, you know what I'm saying, you as, you know what I'm saying, slave that was ruled by France, the Code Noir was an implication. It was implied over there. So like,
sir, absolutely. And this is why, black man, this is why you speak Creole today.
Right.
Why you speak Patois today? Because you were colonized. You were enslaved like every other black and Hispanic and Native Indian. You understand? This is why you're speaking Spanish. Because you were enslaved. You were colonized. Your language was beaten out of you. You were forced to get rid of your culture and your customs and take on the customs of another nation. Christianity and Catholicism was forced down your throat, right? Just like it said in Code Noir. And it's no difference than all this stuff that's coming out on these residential schools. This is what Canada wanted for blacks and Indigenous people. They want you to be a good Catholic. They want you to be a good Christian. Being a good Catholic, being a good Christian is being a good slave. You understand?
Right.
This isn't our culture. Understand? This isn't a culture. This is a result of slavery. Well, let's keep going a bit. It says colonial slave laws such as the Code Noir provided a few minimal protections to enslaved people. The code required owners to provide slaves with food, shelter, and clothing, but it also empowered slave owners to inflict violent punishment on slaves.
All right.
including branding, mutilating, and even killing them. You understand? This is being done to you inside of Canada, black man. I think the average lifespan of a slave in Canada was 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
25 years old. You were being murdered no different than they were in America.
Okay.
You were being mutilated and branded, right? Shalaki, imagine that, 2023. Somebody taking some hot iron and branding you. And you know what the French did? They were branding in Salaki. Maybe you can get me right on this outside here, because I think you know a little more about the French, but I think they were branding black slaves with the lily flower. I think it's called
Okay.
the fleur de
Okay.
lis.
Fleur de lis. Okay.
That's
Certain
what they.
family were using, if you were using the fleur de lis, they used to bring slave with it as well.
God.
I said, meanwhile, Salakia, if I might go further, like the fleur de lis, the lily in English, you understand, is an Israelite symbol.
God.
You know what I'm saying? That's it. That's our symbol. That's God's most lovable flower. That's in the Apocrypha. You know what I'm saying? So it is something disgusting that Canada did, and not just Canada, but all these other nations that had us in slavery. It is something that you know what I'm saying, that is disgusting. But the thing is, at least in the US, you could just, you understand, find like things like in the US, you could find even like the fact that the slave had Hebrew names. You can't find that in Canada. You know what I'm saying? You have to dig hard. You know what I'm saying? You have to basically hack the, you understand, the government and all the, you understand, all the things that they have, like, you understand, the department that they have, to find out, you understand, that the slave that came in Canada had Hebrew names. You understand? Because Canada hid so much of the history of the slave, it is you know what I'm saying, almost impossible to find out, you understand, that those who are the slaves, and not only who are the slave, but the type of atrocities and cruelty that, you understand, that did to those slaves. It is almost impossible if you don't really take your time, just like you did, priest, you know what I'm saying, and do your research to find it out. You understand it? Like, oh, whoa, this is what's going on. This is what went on. It is almost impossible because it is not taught in the school system. You, like I said, you go to the library. You know what I'm saying? You go to the library. You know what I'm saying? The book that talks about slavery, there are books, you understand, like that wants to paint slavery in a good way. Meanwhile, these people being, you understand, like doing some evil thing to, you understand, to Black, Hispanics, and Native Indian. You understand that is crazy. When you read about it, when you start learning about it, you like, how do I not notice? And how do, like, we just like come from all this oppression and then atrocities and just love this place? It is crazy. How do we come from something else, like where they used to do like evil things to us to the core, and to be like, well, you know what, Canada is one of the best places on earth? It is something absolutely crazy, and it puts to mind, like, you know what I'm saying, like how much evil was really done in Canada. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How much evil was really done that they are not talking about. You know what I'm saying? Because what we're doing is just scratching the surface of, you know what I'm saying, the evil of Canada on, you know what I'm saying, of the children of God. But what are, you know what I'm saying, what are those, you know what I'm saying, things that are really hidden that they don't want us to know? Everything will come to light. You know what I'm saying? Barakata Yahweh wa Yahweh, everything will come to light.
Damn right, sir.
It's like,
No sweat. To stay on with that, let's be, just for time's sake, because Slacky, I didn't mean to go away over the time. I'm going to read some of the things that took place in Canada, and then we'll get into a couple scriptures, maybe 1-2 scriptures, just for time's sake, right? So, like Officer Adia said, what are some of the things that were taking place in Canada? Right here, these are some quotes. It says, "The runaway slave shall." This is what they had put. If a black slave was found in Canada, Okay, this is all Canadian history. It says, the runaway slave shall have his ears cut off and shall be branded with the fleur de lis on his shoulder. On the third offense, he shall suffer death.
Yeah.
Same thing going on. Same thing that was happening in America was happening here in Canada. You run away, you get your ears chopped off. Right? That's to let all the other slaves know that they better stay in line. They better say, yes, master. If you don't, you try to run away and get away, you get your ears chopped off.
Good night.
This is all in the making of a good slave. This is what went on here in Canada. And if he gets caught, you brand him with the fleur de lis, like I said, right? Like Officer Adia was saying. Branding them on their shoulders, saying, this is my property. On the third offense, we got to kill this slave. We got to let these people know that there can't be an uprising. We got to put the fear of God in these people to let them know that they better be obedient to their slave master. You understand? We'll jump down a bit. It says, here's another quote. It says, this is what needs to be acknowledged in Canada. We're talking about within these Canadian colonies, enslaved Africans who had all kinds of violence committed upon their bodies. Right? Again, no different from America. Right? No different from the West Indies. No different from slaves who were shipped over to Europe. Slaves who were shipped over to Spain. All of these things were done to our people to keep us enslaved, to keep us as good slaves. Right? This is right, and they speak about the resistance, escape, and activism. This is a Canadian flyer. This is a Canadian flyer, right, that we have today, that we have in museums. Right? It says it's an advertisement offering $20 for the capture of an escaped enslaved person in Nova Scotia. This is dating from March of 1794, right? They're advertising. They're saying there's a runaway slave. He left on Thursday evening, right? This is a Negro manservant, the property of the sub for a buyer named Belfast. You understand? These flyers were all over Canada, no different from the States. You had blacks trying to escape slaves because of all the disgusting things that were happening to our people. Right?
So like a priest, and that slave, if he's cut, you know, if he's cut, what happened is he get cut off, and after that, if he goes again, you know, it gets branded with the fleur de lis, with the lily, and if the third offense, he gets put on a line. That was what's going. That's what was going on in Canada. You understand? And this is why Canada, you understand, doesn't want, just like they don't want Native Indian, you understand, like the world to know what Native Indian you understand, they were doing to Native Indian, just like they hid, you understand, the fact there were bones, and just like, you understand, like cemeteries, you understand, next to those churches, and just like you stated earlier, you understand, the black cemeteries, you understand, where they were burying slaves and whatnot. They don't want us to know about these things because of the cruelty of the Canadian. You understand? Yeah. And this is why they are against the I.S.U.P.K so much. They are not, and if I might, you know what I'm saying, like, just say, I'm saying, like, not give a shout out, but, you know what I'm saying, just go outside of the realm that, you know what I'm saying, that you in right now.
Huh.
This is why they're not going after voodoo, for all you voodoo people. They're not going after voodoo because, you know what I'm saying, you're not talking the truth. Matter of fact, there's white people that are into voodoo. There's white voodoo priests today. This is why they're not going against, you understand, like none of you black Muslim. You understand? Because they understand that, well, Muslim did the Arabs did exactly the same thing that we did to you guys. And you follow the culture and the, you know what I'm saying, the religion, the philosophy right now. Right. This is why they come against the UPK. This is why B'nai B'rith come against the UPK. This is why the Jewish man, Amalekite, that's on your land, today and that trying to, you understand, use your name and say, well, they are the Jews. This is why they're coming against us. Why? Because you understand, they understand who you are. They know who you are. And the fact that you understand all of these atrocities that was done to you, guess what? Guess what, Black, Hispanic, and Native Indian? It's been recorded that in this book that it would happen to you. It's been recorded in this book that these evil son of a gun, these evil, you understand, Eden will do these things to you, man. Imagine you want to run away from, you understand, from slavery, from atrocities of Saskatchewan. You want to save your life. Meanwhile, you can't even save your life in Canada, man. You come in a land where you think it's like milk and honey and freedom. Meanwhile, you understand, you subjected, you understand, to something worse that, you understand, you've seen in the US. Something worse that you've seen in the Caribbean. And you come to, you understand, Canada. And here, they have to chop your ears off if you want to escape. Do you have to get branded if you want to escape? And if you do it a third time, they take your life. Imagine that. Okay. All right. Now, next time you tell a black man to go back to where you come from, you understand? Imagine that. Right. Next time you say, you understand, well, free Palestine, what about free, you understand, justice for those, you understand, black men that were killed, black women that were killed, black babies that were killed in Canada? What about the Native Indian, you understand, that's in captivity on their own land? Before you say free Palestine, justice, you understand, you understand, justice needs to be given to those people, you understand, that you will never say justice has to be given for. And this is why in Acts chapter 13, you understand, verse 23, he says that, you understand, that the Most High, I'm paraphrasing, but the Most High promised to Abraham, promised to our fathers, you understand, that he will send a savior to, you understand, to the people of the nation of Israel. This is why we need to salvation, man. Understand? So like a priest. And by the way, you understand, like priest, I'm on jet out. You know what I'm saying? I have to jet out. But you know what I'm saying? Like for everybody, you know what I'm saying, tune into I.S.U.P.K Montreal if you speak French, I.S.U.P.K Haiti, IT if you speak, you know what I'm saying, Creole. Don't forget, you know what I'm saying, we are live all the time, you know what I'm saying, all this week. You know what I'm saying? All week we're gonna have classes, you know what I'm saying, from now on. You know what I'm saying, from I.S.U.P.K Toronto to I.S.U.P.K Montreal. Tune in, you understand? If you speak French, tune into the French classes as well. We'll break it down for you in English, all right? With that, I say shalom, to all the brothers and sisters out there. Hey, priest, the water for having me, man. That's how I'm gonna jet out. Shalom, priest. Throw
out on one. Appreciate that.
No swear, priest. It's my pleasure, man. Okay. All right, shalom, priest.
Okay, so let me read this last part and then we're gonna end the class. All right, just for time's sake. I know I'm a little over the time. All right, so this is one more thing. All right, one more thing from this article. I posted the article in the chat. Right, again, like Alsha Adia said, make sure you check out his classes. Right, tune in to I.S.U.P.K Montreal. If you want to get the breakdowns in French, right, and of course follow us on I.S.U.P.K Toronto. Okay, if you want to just follow us in English. All right, but we're going to be giving this information out to all our people so that they can understand. Understand? Even to your brothers, you speak Spanish. You speak Spanish. All right, we got I.S.U.P.K classes in Spanish. Okay, make sure you just check us out. Stay tuned in with us. All right, so that you can keep getting this information. All right, so last part of this article I'll bring out. I'll just run through it really quick. Okay, again, I posted the link of this article in the chat if you want to check out some of this information on more of the slavery and the history of slavery, Black slavery in Canada. It says on March 25th, 1807, the slave trade was abolished throughout the British Empire, including British North America. This made it illegal to buy or sell human beings, and so ended British participation in the transatlantic slave trade. So up until 1807, you still had the British involved in the transatlantic slave trade, right? Like I was saying earlier, don't think that the British weren't involved in this, of the slavery of blacks in Canada. Don't think that the French weren't involved. The Spaniards were involved in the slavery of blacks and indigenous here in Canada. Okay, all these different players played a part in our oppression. It says the overall practice of slavery was abolished everywhere in the British Empire in 1834. Notably, Prince Edward Island had already pronounced the complete abolition of slavery in 1825. Okay, you had slavery all throughout Canada. Blacks and indigenous slavery all over Canada. Okay. One more quote, it says, "How can slaves be happy when they have the halter round their neck and the whip upon their back, and are disgraced and thought no more of than beasts?" Okay. This is what was going on in Canada. Chattel slavery. Okay. Chattel slavery, just like it was going on in America. Okay. All right, Salaki, small technical difficulty. All right, but yeah, like I said, chattel slavery going on here in Canada. And so you can check those links out in the chat. All right, we got lots of information that we're going to be sharing. All right, that we're going to continue to get out. Let me read one scripture and then we'll end the class. Okay. Just get out one scripture. Okay, again, Salaki again for being over the time. Okay, one more scripture. All right, we're going to go to the book of John chapter 3 and verse 20. John chapter 3 verse 20 says, "For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light." Okay, and this is what the Europeans, the Caucasians, the so-called oppressor, who we know as the devil that the Bible speaks of. These Canadians, they hate the light. You understand? They hate everything about the light. That's who they are. That's in their spirit. Why? Because they do so much evil. So much evil was done to blacks and indigenous people here in Canada. So much evil is done to the Hispanic man here in Canada. You understand? So many stories, so many records of evil being done to our people. Evil being done to the children of God. You understand? And that's why Canada, they hate the light. And we're going to see, as it was prophesied, that more and more things are going to continue to be revealed. More and more unmarked graves, more and more dead bodies, more and more stories of slavery and all the disgusting things that Canada does to the children of God. Okay, it says, "Neither cometh to the light." You understand? The Canadians, they don't come to the light about their history. It's not something that they've done on their own. It just so happens that a farmer runs over some human bones in his farm. Somebody just stumbles along a sign that says Negro Cemetery. Somebody stumbles along a story of a sister trying to escape slavery. All of a sudden, now Canada is speaking about it. Now all of a sudden, Canada cares. You think Canada didn't know that they had residential schools for 200 years? You think Canada doesn't know about the slavery? You don't think Europeans know about all the things that they've done to colonize Canada? Yet they don't come to the light. They don't do it on their own. Because they hate the light. They hate the light because of who they are. All right, it says, for everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. And what happened when Canadians started hearing about residential schools in Canada? Canadians said, that's wrong, man. That's wrong for what we did. Those Catholics, they're wrong for what they did to the Indigenous people on those residential schools. People reproved them. People checked them. They said, what you're doing is evil. What you're doing is wicked. Everybody calling for an apology. And what did they do? They had the Pope fly out over from Europe to come over to Canada to give a public apology for what Catholics played a part in and all the disgusting things towards Indigenous people. That's exactly what's going on here in Canada. Everybody's checking Canada. I.S.U.P.K, we're going to reprove. We're going to check Canada. We're going to tell Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans of all the evil that you did to the children of God. All the evil that you continue to do. Okay? And this is why we need these classes, Black man, Hispanic man, Native American man. We need these classes. We need these scriptures. We need to understand all the knowledge of this Bible. All right? We need to understand the knowledge of this Bible so that we can have a light, so that we can have some guide, all right, to help us make some good decisions, right, as we're here serving out our oppression. Okay, so with that, Salakia for going over the time, all right, but we're going to end the class here. Okay, so again, make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit those sign-in links. I'll put the sign-up links in the chat. Okay, if you're a brother or sister who wants to join the school. All right, again, like, share, subscribe. And with that, I'm going to say Shalom, Israel.
Right at it. Hear the hunger in my voice, they used to tell me to speak up. The problem was of what I was saying, they couldn't keep up. Instead of moving around with some patience, they tried to speed up. It got colder than a bitter bitch, found me a way to heat up. What's a favor for a favor if we all didn't make it? Kept it 100 with everybody, but they just gon' change. I ain't get caught up in the hype, cause I ain't feel like I made it. Couldn't picture me here now, but here's your moment to frame it. And I ain't never understand that self-entitlement spirit. I felt your vibe, I don't wanna get near it. Before I made the appearance, I took a second, took a look in the mirror. This God, Lord, the only thing that I fear. Y'all got me fucked up. It's all passion, it's tradition, it ain't fashion. It's no action, they make threats and it's still passing. I think massive, no respond, that's still tact. Y'all should quit rapping. Cheap shots, I'm cinematic. I ain't average, I'm an overthrow fanatic. How I go, you lose and win like asthmatics. I got first, that's automatic. I'm the best in my division. In the ghetto like the pigeons, in the hood like the engine. You a bird for that chicken. I don't fake split decisions cause my mind made up, nigga. We in the end of time, but my time